What's up, buddies? And buddy girls. So I'm using my old microphone today, so I don't have the two mics for ear to ear, but it's still kind of, you could still get the effect a little bit. But today I want to read a book. Not a full book, but I'd like to start reading a book. And I was searching for, something like sci-fi, a sci-fi type of book, and I found this one. It had pretty good reviews on it. I didn't really look into the storyline that much. I was just going on reviews and from a couple different websites, so it has mostly positive reviews. So this is going to be my first read, along with you. Maybe some of you have read this before, I'm not sure. I'm not really sure how popular this book is, but it's like a series, and I think there's like 7 of them so far. I'm not sure, but it's called Starshine. And I'm gonna start with the prologue. The end of the world began with a library query, or perhaps it was the space probe. The alien was being vexingly reticent on the matter. The man thought as he straightened his dinner jacket in the mirror. She is hardly the first person to express an interest in that region of space. Why are you so worried about her when the others didn't concern you? The others did concern us, but they were deflected with little difficulty. This woman, however, has exhibited a notable talent for discovering what others cannot. As such, we would prefer she never look. The man smoothed out a crease in one of the sleeves, then fastened the antique pearl cufflinks, an heirloom passed down to him from a grandfather that never was. Do you want me to have her killed? Not unless alternative methods are unsuccessful. Her death could cause the opposite effect of drawing further unwanted attention. The man nodded cursorily and stepped out of the washroom, crossing his spacious office to the windows lining the far wall. Very well, I'll work to ensure she's distracted from this pursuit. What about the Senecans? They are a more troublesome problem, as they have already discovered an anomaly exists. They will send others to investigate. From the top floor of the Earth Alliance headquarters building, the man could see guests beginning to arrive in the gardens below. Another 10 minutes, and it would be appropriate for him to join them. He frowned, brushing a piece of lint off his lapel before he turned from the windows to face where the alien might have stood. actually here. You know there's little I can do about them for the moment. You needn't concern yourself with the matter. Other resources are at our disposal. I'm sure, and you remember, you only need to stall them for a short while. Soon everyone will be distracted, and humanity will be focused inward for quite some time. Go forward with your plan. We hope you accomplish your objectives. Nonetheless, events are converging rapidly, and they are not all within your control. Escalation may be unavoidable. The man pulsed his wife to let her know he would meet her in the lobby shortly. At least give me the opportunity to alter our course before you act. It won't be long now. Certainly. Know, however, that the precipice is upon you. It may already have been crossed. Preparations have begun. Chapter 1, Earth, Seattle. Alex, I'm ready when you are. One more second, okay, Charlie? Go ahead. The muffled response came from within the hall. The young mechanic wove the crystalline fiber of a conduit into the power control grid. It took only seconds. He squinted into the magnification overlay to confirm the contact points. All set. Here goes nothing. Colonel Richard Navick watched from the entry of the hangar bay as a shimmer passed over the smooth midnight black exterior of the ship. Even marred by the docking clamps, the Cyane was sleek and graceful, with sweeping curves that converged on acute edges. Technical instruments and sensors were tucked discreetly. Under the wing-like midsection, while the slume drive was an elusive shadow beneath the tapered tail, the elegant lines disguised its size, fully 42 meters from bow to stern. It was enormous, at least for a personal scout ship. He cleared his throat to announce his presence and stepped into the bay. Alex, are you in there somewhere? A head dropped out of the belly of the ship. It was upside down and encircled by the orbiting screens of a holographic interface. Richard, is that you? Guilty as charged. A pair of long legs appeared next as she swung out of the exposed engineering well and dropped a meter to land nimbly on the floor of the bay. The interface winked out of existence. He was struck, as he always was after he hadn't seen her for some time, by how much she looked like her father, tall and slender, with high distinctive cheekbones and bright silver-gray eyes. She cut almost as dramatic a figure as David Solovey once had. In fact, the sole feature of note she had inherited from her mother was the thick, dark mane of hair. Whereas David's had been dusky blonde, hers was the color of fine-aged Bordeaux. It was also currently twisted up in a messy knot, flyaway strands escaping to soften her features. She wiped streaks of a viscous gel off her hands and onto snug black work pants as she jogged over. When she reached him, she embraced him in a quick hug born of years of familiarity. It's been too long, Richard. If you would stay in this sector for longer than a week, eyes rolled a little as she settled onto her back leg. No can do, I'm afraid. All the fun's out there. A corner of her mouth quirked up in a tease of a grin. He believed her. So, I hear, all the money apparently. He canted his head toward the gleaming hull. Her face instantly lit up. It often did when she was talking about her ship. I just painted on a new F-graphene alloy lattice. It will reduce drag by another 12%, which will mean faster travel using less fuel. Nice. The reduction from a Picado femto scale alloys had only become commercially available 9 months earlier. He shuddered to think of the credit she must have forked over for the new lattice. We should have the budget to roll those out to the fleet in a decade or so. She shrugged, as if to say, "Your loss," and met his gaze. For most people, it would have been an uncomfortable experience. "So, is this a social call? As glad as I am to see you. I really am. I'm kinda in the middle of installing a stealth system upgrade. We could maybe have dinner this evening if you'd like." He mentally braced himself for the reaction he knew would be coming. "You caught me. It's not entirely a social call. Your mother wants you to come by the office if you have any free time this afternoon." Her pupils constricted, the tiny flash of an ocular implant, a hint she was checking her comms. They quickly focused back on him, bearing more than a little less warmth. "I don't have a message from her." "I know. She thought the likelihood of you responding would increase considerably if I came in person." An eyebrow arched. "She have you running her errands for her now? Isn't that a bit below your pay grade?" "No. I volunteered because I wanted to see you." She smiled with what he recognized as kindness, but it was transitory to her glance over her shoulder at the ship that dominated the hangar. "Well, sorry, but I can't. I have to run diagnostics on the new dampener field and recalibrate the power system ratios, assuming everything tests out okay. Then I have to secure the fiber line to the hull and shield it." His gaze flitted pointedly to the young man swinging in a harness near the stern of the ship. "Can your mechanic do some of those things for you?" At her deepening frown, his brow creased in bestigement. "Please, for me. It'll only take an hour or two, and he knew saying it would make her mother happy would be counterproductive. Will make my life rather easier." Her eyes narrowed. Her arms stiffened against her chest to complete the impression of a staunch resoluteness. But this was not the first time he had faced down her defiant glare. He relaxed his posture, softened his expression, and met her scowl with a pleasant smile. After several seconds, she exhaled to striking effect, all the tension leaving her body with the exaggerated breath. For just a moment, she reminded him of the impish little girl she had once been. "Fine, for you. I'm going to regret it, though." Alex stared out the window of the sky car while they cruised above Budget Sound before veering northwest over the strait toward Vancouver Island. The unbroken line of skyscrapers to the right shone in the late morning sun from horizon to horizon. All polished silvers and whites flecked by deep green where the numerous parks peeked through. It was and had always been a beautiful view, but she was being a poor companion. She gave up stealing herself for what was sure to be the latest in a long line of unpleasant visits with her mother, and shifted from the window to look at Richard, her parents' oldest and closest friend. She had known him for as long as she could recall, which was to say about 35 years. He was one of the very few people who had consistently accepted her for who and what she was, didn't want more from her, didn't hopefully suggest what her life should be like, didn't disapprovingly at even her most unorthodox activities. So, what's new with you? Work okay? How's Will doing? He relaxed in his seat and let the car auto-navigate the crowded airlines. Will is good, but busy. He's been on Shishen for the last month, overseeing the construction of the new Surin headquarters, and finally got home day before yesterday. I'll tell him you said hello. The muscles in his jaw clenched briefly, which was generally the extent of his outward signals of displeasure. Work is rather tense. What with the trade summit coming up? She gave him a blank look. What is a trade summit, and why is it coming up? Help me out here. Right. You don't spend much time obsessing about the oh-so-fascinating machinations of galactic politics. The trade minister and his entourage will be attending a conference with the Senecan trade director at a carefully selected neutral location, naturally, on Atlantis. He sighed, his gaze drifting upward to grimace at the heavens. It's ostensibly an olive branch intended to thaw relations with the Federation a bit, but I'm afraid in reality it's going to be a little more than a media circus. And your people will be spying on the Senecan delegation, hacking their data streams every chance they get, while fending off the same from their agents. Her teasing smirk served to emphasize the point. His mouth worked to suppress a grin, but mostly failed. I can neither confirm nor deny any such suppositions on the grounds it would violate Earth Alliance security. Of course. The car dropped through a thin layer of mist which hadn't yet burned off and skimmed above the choppy waves as the sprawling Earth Alliance Strategic Command Complex came into view. Stretching for 3 square kilometers across the southernmost tip of the island, a network of mid-rise buildings, plazas, and hangars fanned out from the towering structure that constituted the headquarters for what were, as a group, the most powerful men and women in the settled Milky Way. For better or worse, this included the EASC Director of Operations. She could feel her expression tightening with every meter of their descent onto the open platform jutting out a third of the way up the headquarters building. So, how is the Admiral these days? As cheery as ever? He shook his head wryly, killed the engine, and climbed out of the car. She's the same as usual, busily supervising the entire organization while breaking in yet another new secretary. Lovely. She matched his stride to the glass-floored lift, not bothering to grasp the rail as it whisked them up a quarter kilometer to the command staff offices, which comprised the top 10 floors. After they had cleared the security scanners and were inside, she turned to him. Though her mood here before I start blaming you for ruining my day, especially when it was good to see you. He laughed and patted her on the shoulder, then headed toward his office down the opposite hall. Try not to be too much of a stranger, okay? She waved him off as she crossed the overly bright atrium and stepped through the wide doorway into the EASC operations suite. The man behind the desk glanced up as she approached. After a blink, his eyes widened. You're her, aren't you, Miss? Captain Sullivan, ma'am. She draped an arm on the high counter. It's not a military title. Miss is fine. Would you please let my mother know I have answered her summons and eagerly await being granted the favor of an audience? The man, a second lieutenant according to the bars on his uniform, stared at her in horror, brow furrowing and unfurrowing in mounting panic. Do you want me to say that specifically, ma'am? I'm not certain the Admiral will. Just tell her that her daughter is here. Absolutely, right away. She wandered over to inspect the newest addition to the artwork decorating the lobby. This secretary was unlikely to last any longer than the last one had. Even the most hardened soldier wilted in the face of her mother's disapproving glare. She was pondering how many credits the military must have wasted on this spectacularly bad hack Picasso ripoff, when the secretary informed her she could go in now. She walked in the large but Spartan office to observe without surprise that nothing about it had changed in the near year since she had last visited. Admiral Miriam Salafi didn't immediately turn her attention from the display panel in her hand. Her hair was drawn back in a severe bun. Her uniform was crisp, its buttons spit-polished. When her gaze did rise to acknowledge Alex's presence, a tight, thin facsimile of a smile passed across her face for the minimum time required. You look a wreck. Ah, as kind and doting as always, she shrugged. I was working. I see. Would you like some tea? Water's fine. Which she proceeded to go to the cabinet and get herself. How are you, dear? Alex took a long sip from the marbled glass tumbler and leaned in deliberate casualness beside the teak bookcase filled with antique text on military and political history. Fine. Busy. You. The tiny vein in her mother's left temple pulsed. She traded the screen for a teacup, as well as can be expected. The Fianava province has been a nuisance of late. I would share the details with you, but of course the parking attendant has a higher security clearance than you do. The tenor with which the statement was delivered seemed to imply it was somehow a failing on her part. Alas, Miriam took a slow, measured sip of her tea, then stared pensively into the dainty cup, as though it would magically supply her a suitable topic for small talk. I ran into Malcolm at the Cascades Memorial Charity Auction last week and met his new wife. She needed a wiser teacup. Alex raised a studiously unimpressed eyebrow. I'm sure she was lovely. Not so lovely as you, I must say, but attractive enough. He asked about you. Her eyes flickered over to the window. Shit. She bit back a cringe at the display of weakness, not wanting to compound the error. And what did you tell him? The truth. That you're still gallivanting around the galaxy, raking in millions and pouring it all back into the damnable ship of yours. She paused, undoubtedly for dramatic opposite the desk. She pulled one knee up to hug against her chest. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and assume you didn't ask me here in order to throw failed love affairs in my face. It's a long list, and I haven't the time. What do you want? Miriam placed the teacup on the couch behind her and sat as well, rigid, straight spine, not touching the back of the comparably luxurious chair. I can't simply want to spend time with my only child. You can, but you don't. Her mother's shoulders squared with military precision, an indication she wouldn't argue the point. Very well. I asked you here to share a wonderful opportunity for you. The Minister for Extra Solar Development contacted me yesterday. He finds himself with a vacancy in his department. Apparently the Director of Deep Space Exploration is resigning to pursue other endeavors, and the Minister would like to offer the post to you. A flashing pinpoint of light in the corner of Alex Evie's eyes signaled the delivery of the diagnostics. She had set to run before departing the hangar. Her right pupil constricted to start the results, scrolling on her whisper. Prestigious position. If her mother noticed the somewhat unfocused nature of her gaze, she hit it well. It's not nepotism. While you lack oversight experience, you're otherwise more than qualified. More qualified than the parking attendant, at least. The whisper blurred out of focus and autopaused as she directed a sharpened gaze toward the woman on the other side of the desk. Her mother couldn't seem to decide whether to scowl or laugh. The result was an uncommonly animated expression. But what exactly of everything you know about me says a government desk job? It's not a desk job. You'll need to travel to evaluate new discoveries several times a year, I'm quite sure. Several times a year? Her nose scrunched up in disdain. You know what? Never mind. So you'll consider it then? The whisper snapped back into focus as she frowned at the percentages displayed. A blink and a small oral materialized, and the diagnostics data began flowing in greater precision and detail 12 centimeters beyond her right eye. No. Her mother's jaw clacked shut at the response. Or because of the oral. Possibly both. I didn't say accept it unconditionally, merely consider it. Damn, there must be a power leak somewhere along the fiber. She pulsed Charlie to send the bot to expect the line. The dampener had to be a minimum of 28% more effective, or it wasn't worth the diamond pickle crystals, which generated it. Her last find had almost been snaked out from under her because Terrence Macaulay, too much of a lazy ass to do his own work, had tracked her emission signature and followed her into the asteroid ring orbiting Delta Lacerdae. She didn't intend to risk a repeat intrusion. No. Alexis, her mother twitched, though her focus didn't shift from the data this time. You know I hate it when you call me that. I have every right to call you by your birth name. I am the one who gave it to you after all. Alex spared a brief, withering glance. Her mother's eyes were averted downward, ostensibly studying the patterns of foam in her tea, perchance for more lousy ideas. When she spoke again, her tone was softer and no longer quite the voice of the Admiral. Your father was the first one to call you Alex. She shut off the oral in frustration. Don't you think I know that? Yes. Well, Miriam's chin notched upward. I think you should reconsider the minister's offer. It is a position of some prominence. It will provide a measure of stability you could benefit from. guess you're used to dictating people's lives to them around here. But you don't get to make my decisions for me. You haven't for a long, long time. Miriam nodded with measured grace, appearing to acknowledge for the moment Alex had the upper hand. Perhaps it was inconsiderate of me to insist you come here. To order Richard to deliver your summons and drag me before you, you mean? She raised a hand in mild protest. Richard wanted the chance to see you. I hope you don't blame him for any unpleasantness. Oh, I don't. I blame you. To her credit, her mother was nearly impossible to provoke. If anything, her expression softened in response to the barb. I'm not trying to tell you how to live your life, but I worry about you. Out there, all alone in deep space, that ship of yours is too powerful for one person to handle. Yet even in her attempt at kindness, or at least civility, she managed to choose the exact wrong thing to say. Deep down, Alex knew it probably wasn't intentional, but there was too many hateful words and spiteful reactions to them. Too much water under a broken bridge, and she had no desire to grasp at a tenuous thread only to have it fray and dissolve like all the others. The past 8 years would beg to differ with you. With all due respect, you have no idea just how much I can handle. She stood abruptly. Is there anything else? No, not when you won't listen to reason. She didn't rise to the bait. She simply wanted to be gone. If you'd like, I will send a graciously worded response to the minister thanking him for the honor of considering me, but regretfully declining due to other obligations. That won't be necessary. I'll inform him. Suit yourself. She pivoted and headed for the door. Alexis. She paused mid-stride, an inborn response to a mother's plea, but didn't look back. At least be careful out there. A tight nod, and she was gone. It was well past 2300 when Alex got home. The pod had found 2 micro-imperfections in the fiber which had to be rewoven. Then the diagnostics had to be run again. The wire remodded, and the power system ratios recalibrated again before she closed the ship up for the night. Securing the line to the hull and shielding it would have to wait until the morning. She opened a bottle of Swiss Cabernet and left it to breathe while she ran through the shower. Then combed out her hair and slipped on a silk robe to wear back downstairs. A glass of Cabernet in hand, she stepped out onto the balcony. The glittering night lights of the city spread out beneath her, the light reflecting off the moon mirrored in the sound beyond. She didn't pour all her profits into her ship. The lofty 80 stories above. Downtown had cost more than a few credits. The custom tech installed in it nearly as much again, though she was only here maybe 3 months out of a given year. She wasn't above enjoying at least a few of the finer things her income now afforded her. As the glass touched her lips, her thoughts drifted to Malcolm. She hadn't done so in some time, but after the mention of him today, quite a few memories had crept to the forefront of her mind. Most of them were good. She had loved him after all. But according to him, she loved her ship more, and that was something he couldn't accept. And since he was mostly right, she hadn't fought him when he left. She had missed him for a while. Missed his warm smile and tender yet expert touch. But she had also welcomed the absence of the invisible leash, which had tugged her back to earth more often than she liked, which had whispered of duties to another and required explanations and justifications for every excursion, and eventually even the good memories had faded into the background, replaced by the thrill of new endeavors. thoughts continued to linger on the past as she walked inside, and her gaze fell to the far wall of the open room that constituted the entirety of the loft, save for the kitchen and the elevated sleeping area overlooking the main floor. It was decorated in visuals she had captured in her travels across the galaxy. They included a supernova in bright perpetual explosion, a comet on a flyby of a crescent moon, the slow pulse of a ghostly blue and lavender nebula, and the gamma flare of a neutron star. Those and others framed the centerpiece of the wall, a panoramic side-on image of the Milky Way, taken far from the light pollution of any suns or haze of any nebulae. Trillions of stars shone and sparkled to converge on the brilliance of the galactic core. Malcolm hadn't been exactly right. Yes, she loved her ship more than she had loved him. But what she loved even more was what it gave her: freedom and the key to the marvels of space. It gave her the stars, and she doubted she could ever love anything or anyone more than she loved the stars. Speaking of, she refilled her glass and settled onto the couch. She sent a passcode to the control interface, and the opposite wall dissolved into a three-dimensional hollow of the nearest quadrant of the galaxy. A slight wave of her hand, and it zoomed into the Metis Nebula and its environs. Near to, but definitely outside Federation-controlled territory and on the outer edge of explored space, it would take her 5 days to reach the periphery, far less time than most, but still a trek. It was an allegedly uninteresting, ordinary Plarian wrapped in an ancient, gas-heavy supernova remnant, which had stubbornly refused to dissipate into the interstellar medium. But she had made a small fortune by seeing what others did not. The experts had said the Lacertae asteroid ring was nothing but dead rocks until she had found the ultra-rare heavy metals in the cores of the largest ones. Now Astral Materials was using it to develop frames for space stations they claimed would be strong enough to withstand a type IA supernova shockwave. The golden blue glow of Metis had caught her attention several excursions ago and had danced and thrummed at the edge of her consciousness ever since. Now flush with the considerable proceeds of the Lacertae find. In the resultant ship upgrades, she figured she could afford to indulge on for a month or so. Her eyes widened deliberately, pupils dilated, and ocular implant flashing as she simultaneously reviewed the data she pulled in her library query of the scientific archives, which was appallingly sparse. Scrolling up her EVI, the rotating full-spectrum image of the nebula and her own data flowing alongside it. Well, you lovely, mysterious Metis, what secrets do you have to show me? And that is the end of Chapter 1. If you guys liked this, then I will definitely read another chapter. If not, then I will just read this for myself. I thought the first chapter was pretty interesting, so I'm definitely going to read more. But yeah, let me know if you like this. So then I know if I should read this more. If I don't hear anything, maybe I'll read another chapter. But just easier if you guys leave comments and letting me know if you want to see more of this kind of thing. Anyways, you guys know the deal. Hit that like button, comment, subscribe, share, blah, 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 blah. You know, hope you're sleeping right now. You're probably not even hearing what I'm saying right now because you're sleeping. And yeah, but when you wake up the next day, if you fell asleep from this video, hopefully you will leave a comment or something. I don't know. Do people do that? I'm not sure. I always try to listen to a video like maybe 5-10 minutes and leave a comment before I go to sleep. Because if I don't leave the comment then, or hit the like button, then I won't remember the next day. So I always try to do that after a few minutes of listening, to see if I like the video first, and then do that, and then I'll just normally fall asleep to a video.